So I'd always planned for this month's video to actually be on this topic, but as time went on and we rolled further into August, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to do it. You know, there's a lot going on in football right now. It's the start of the new season, Barcelona are doing weird stuff with their finances, and most importantly, Lampard is playing Iwobi as a central midfielder. But then, Chelsea versus Spurs happened. It's Monday the 15th of August as I'm recording this, and the social media fallout to a massive Sunday night Premier League fixture has been relentless, and I'm waiting for Monday Night Football to start with Neville and Carragher, where almost all of the talk has been centred around the man in the middle with the whistle, and all of it has given me a massive sense of deja vu. When was the last time we didn't roll into a Monday where there wasn't a massive controversy about officiating in the Premier League? When was the last time we had a big Premier League fixture where all the talk wasn't about what decisions the referee got right and what the referee got wrong? Chelsea versus Spurs finished 2-2 in a fantastic game marred with refereeing controversy, but I'm not only here to talk about specific instances from that game. Firstly, absolutely everyone else has, and secondly, because I can't help but shake the feeling that abuse culture towards referees in the game has gotten seriously out of hand. For many of you, that statement alone is enough to immediately close that tab and stop watching. Referees are often seen as incompetent, smug, inhuman-like beings that are undeserving of any sympathy and conversely deserving of every piece of abuse they receive. And that's exactly my point. How did we get here? And was it always like this? There's a notion now that refereeing standards in the Premier League, and the Premier League specifically, have dramatically fallen in the last few years. And not only is this claim biased and mostly baseless, suggestions of why this may have happened and how to solve it range from the silly to the absurd. As always, let's just look at the facts. World Cup referees are selected by the FIFA Refereeing Department and the FIFA Referee Assistance Programme for each tournament. Referees are chosen in teams of 3, with 1 designated head referee and 2 assistant referees, in an extensive process which considers performance, viability and fitness over a 3-year period. This is led by a man called Massimo Bisacca, who is a Swiss referee who refereed for more than 22 years and over 100 top-flight matches. As a side note, in researching for this video, Massimo Bisacca's Wikipedia page states that he was crowned Switzerland Non-Smoker of the Year in 2006. The source this Wikipedia page states is a link to worldreferee.com, where there's absolutely no mention of this award. Every other website I have found that mentions this fact also seems to reference this Wikipedia entry and doesn't claim any other source. Is Massimo editing his own Wikipedia page? If he isn't, who has edited this in? If it's real, then what organisation decides who gets the Switzerland Non-Smoker of the Year award? Who won in 2007? 2008? If we were to assume that 2007 was its inaugural year, which is a worst case assumption, that means we could potentially have 15 Swiss Non-Smoker of the Year award winners out there. Seriously, what is this? I can't find anything about this anywhere. If you know anything about the Swiss Non-Smoker of the Year award, maybe even if you've won it before, please get in touch. I am dead fucking serious. Right, anyway, back to the video. For the FIFA 2022 World Cup, there are only 3 nations where multiple male referees have risen through the process and have ranked high enough to be selected. These are Argentina, Brazil and England. Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor, yes, that Anthony Taylor, have been selected to referee at the World Cup. This means that they take 2 assistants each, leading to 6 English officials who have ranked high enough to referee on the world stage at the biggest tournament of them all. But it's not just FIFA, UEFA clearly rate the pair too, with Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor refereeing 4 games each in the Champions League last season, which is an excellent return when you consider that all 4 English teams reached the latter stages of that tournament, where they would then be ineligible to referee. In fact, Anthony Taylor was selected to referee the quarter-final between Villarreal and Bayern Munich, which was the biggest game he could possibly have officiated last season, as Liverpool and Manchester City featured in both semi-finals and then Liverpool again in the final. Hardly indicative of a massive regression in refereeing standards in the Premier League then. Both UEFA and FIFA rate English referees highly by their standards and by their selection processes. It's impossible to say how both organisations rate a country's entire refereeing pool, as the referees for these competitions are specifically selected to be from a wide variety of nations. They'll never select more than 2 referees from the same nation, regardless of how good they are, for the sake of diversity. In all honesty, it seems that the biggest thing holding back English referees from refereeing the biggest games every season are the sheer amount of these pesky English clubs that keep reaching the latter stages of Europe, and even the national team going all the way in the Euro 2020 final. It's hilarious to me that people act like there is only a problem with officiating in England and that, I don't know, all these other leagues across Europe are some sort of utopia where controversial decisions don't dominate the news every week, and everyone in France or in Spain or in Germany just absolutely love their referees. It couldn't be further from the truth. I listen regularly to the Spanish football podcast as well as Golazzo, the Italian football podcast, and every week they talk about some refereeing decision that the respective country is currently up in arms about. The real difference here is the vast number of the world that speak English as a first or second language, making it easier to consume English media and specifically the Premier League. So when a controversial moment happens, the world hops onto Twitter to chime in. Football fans in England, in Germany, in Spain, in Australia, in America, wherever it may be, all chime in to amplify every little detail of the game and then blow them up into ridiculous proportions. I mean, look, you tell me, how did Alejandro Hernandez do officiating Barcelona's opening game of La Liga versus Rayo Vallecano? Oh, you don't know? Yeah, well, I don't know either. I also didn't watch it. But Spanish football Twitter is furious at him for not giving a penalty to Barcelona, and the Barcelona board of directors have publicly logged a complaint against his refereeing performance. Sound familiar? This is match day 1 in La Liga, by the way. They're rabid from the start. We're all the same. It's a joke to suggest that the perceived lowering of officiating standards is only a Premier League problem. Every big league across the world is as angry and as obsessive with refereeing decisions as we are. Look, is it not more plausible that rather than an actual lowering of standards in officiating, when practically every other aspect of the sport is at the highest quality it has ever been, is actually just the way in which we evaluate referees that has changed? What I mean by this is that we are now blessed with more ways than ever to watch and rewatch every individual detail on a football pitch. Every Premier League stadium is kitted out with ultra high definition 4K cameras, able to capture every single angle of every single action and then infinitely replay them in super slow motion. Maybe it's not that standards have lowered, but the level of scrutiny is now just unbelievably high. Every decision is analysed, discussed and replayed over and over again, not only while the game is still being played out on the pitch, but as soon as we jump back to the studio too. And even then, long after the game is done, you can hop onto Twitter to find video clips from even more moments from the game for you to feel aggrieved and enraged at. Look, I'm not saying that we should never discuss refereeing decisions, but it's important to take everything into context. Do you really think that refereeing is worse than, say, the late 90s? Or is it that back in the late 90s, the screen was a bit blurry, we didn't have a specific angle that now makes it definitely look like a foul, and once the game was over, you could rewatch the match over and over, poring over every challenge, every tackle, and every potential handball? But okay, I get it, you don't care. FIFA and UEFA are both corrupt organisations or whatever, and you don't trust their judgment. You only watch the Premier League and you don't care about the other leagues. The level of scrutiny maybe doesn't matter because referees should do their job and never make a mistake. Even if we accept all of that and hypothesise that officiating in the Premier League is totally in the toilet, In what ways do we change things to improve it? A popular theory that I've seen bounded about on social media is to start fining referees for when they make mistakes. This idea also sometimes manifests itself in the form of sacking or outright banning referees from the sport if a mistake has been deemed too big and too controversial and too obvious by the outraged masses. The implication here being that referees are complacent and happy that standards have slipped. As said before, smug human beings, happy to collect a paycheck, ruin a Chelsea fan's day, and then head home. But think about it for more than 30 seconds and, well, it's just nonsense. The journey to being a top-level Premier League referee is long, hard, and unglamorous. Just think about it. Who grows up wanting to be a football referee? It usually takes around 7 years of refereeing matches and passing assessments for a referee to reach a salary of around £300 per game. For at least half of those 7 years, that number will be around £80 or less. The Premier League pays the lowest match fees to referees than any other top 5 league, according to data on goal.com. For clarity and fairness, the Premier League does pay referees a retainer of around £40,000 per year, but we're still looking at a top salary of around £70,000 per year to officiate in the toughest, most watched, most scrutinised and most elite level league in the world. Even if we're to best case scenario this and you do reach the highest echelons of officiating, we're looking at what? Ballpark 100k a year? It's not Jeff Bezos stuff, is it? And of course, you're only getting paid that figure for the years when you are at the top. You're not paid that for all the years when you're on your way up. And what if you never make it all the way up? Match fees for championship referees sit at around £600 per game with no retainer. It's even lower and even less glamorous the further you drop down the divisions. So this idea that this is a monetary issue and fining or suspending referees when they make mistakes will improve their performance is farcical. Think about all the downsides making a high-profile mistake brings to an official, both personally and professionally. Not only do you become one of the most hated, most vilified people in the entire country for that week, but your finances indirectly take a dent anyway. As said before, FIFA and UEFA monitor, review and rate these referees over a 3-year period. If you don't perform, you don't get given the big games. If you don't get given the big games, you don't get the big wage. We don't need to fine or suspend referees for mistakes because in a roundabout way, we already do this through FIFA and UEFA's performance reviews. When a controversial moment happens in a full stadium of rabid fans hurling abuse with millions watching across the globe as they are tasked to make a split-second decision during a sport that moves unbelievably fast, it's mind-numbing to believe that any referee has money on their mind in that moment. Every time this sort of thing gets suggested, it's always something along the lines of, that's how the world works. If I made a mistake in my job, I'd be fired. Stupid. I make mistakes in my job every single day. Every day. And you do too. We all do. And when you make a mistake, your boss doesn't instantly tell you to pack your things and get out. And he doesn't threaten to dock your pay for that month, does he? And I'm willing to bet that you make your mistakes while performing your job under considerably less pressure than a Premier League referee in charge of Chelsea versus Spurs. So what next? Another common one is to mic up referees during the game or to pull them out after the game and to get them to explain their decisions in a post-match interview. This sentiment is extremely prolific and everyone seems to think that this is some sort of magic bullet which will solve all of the anger and all of the hate and all of the abuse. Oh, if they only explain their decision, then I'd no longer be mad. But I just don't get it and I don't see it. Firstly, the damage is done. You're not mad because you thought a throw-in in the 5th minute should have gone to the home team and not the away team. You're mad because you think Raheem Sterling dived and now Denmark have been eliminated from the Euros. You're mad because Spurs have, in your eyes, undeservedly nicked a point at the bridge. No explanation, no matter what it is, will ever reverse those things. The damage is done. There's absolutely no way football fans of all fan bases would calmly accept an explanation and that would somehow solve everything. Come on, let's be real about it. Secondly, we already know the explanations that the official will give. Let's take Romero's hair pull on Cucurella as an example. If Anthony Taylor had to explain this, well, he says either one or two things. Number one, he doesn't see it. He's looking at 6 other pairs of men tussling in the box like every other corner, or he's focusing on something else in that split second where Romero makes the infringement. He doesn't see it, and then VAR didn't advise him to take a second look. Would that go down well? Is that all cleared up now? Well, we know exactly what would happen. A Chelsea fan on Twitter would find the clip of the incident, play it in slow motion, and then tweet something along the lines of, "How could he have not seen it? It's right in front of him. He's so incompetent. He's corrupt. Burn him at the stake." Or, number two, he says that he does see it, but in the split second when it occurs, he feels that Cucurella makes the most of it and goes down dramatically. Maybe he says that out of the corner of his eye, he thought Romero grabbed the top of his shirt or his shoulder and not his hair. Would that go down well? Well, obviously not. Again, he'd be chastised and ridiculed for seeing it and then not giving it. It would not quell any anger. It would not set any angry Chelsea fans' mind at ease. We can go further. Let's say we pulled Mike Dean out of the VAR truck and threw him in front of the camera to explain why he didn't advise Taylor to take a second look. We all know what he will say. Something along the lines of, he saw the possible infringement, but due to the high bar standards the Premier League have set for the VAR, he simply didn't think it was absolutely indisputable enough to warrant Taylor to show Romero the red card. We need to look at the laws here. Thanks to Dale Johnson at ESPN, who does a weekly Twitter thread on all things VAR related. He's great at this stuff, and I didn't know this myself without him, so thank you. Here's the quote. "The VAR cannot advise a referee that has missed a general free kick offence in open play that doesn't lead directly to a goal or a penalty. If the referee misses a foul in the lead up to a corner, the VAR cannot tell referees to cancel that set play." Meaning, the only way the VAR can get involved in this situation is if Mike Dean feels that there has been a red card offence. Clearly, Mike Dean felt that this was not the case. If Mike Dean said that to you through your television set, would that make you feel any better about the outcome of the game, Chelsea fans? Because whether it's right or wrong, whether you agree or not, that's the explanation, and that's what he's going to give. The damage is already done. The reason we don't get referees explaining their decisions after games is because absolutely no one wants to hear from them. People think they do, but they don't. Because as a fan, once you've made up your mind about something that you are so emotionally invested in, then there is absolutely no explanation that's going to make you change your mind. Well, there is actually a third explanation Taylor or Dean could say, and that's to simply admit that they made a mistake. In all honesty, if I were to put money on it, I'm pretty sure both men went home that Sunday night, watched it back, and both realised that they had made a mistake. But again, would coming out and stating this achieve anything? Humans are unforgiving creatures, and football fans are so unforgiving that I don't think the word unforgiving even justifies it. You live in a fantasy world if you think that Taylor coming out and publicly admitting his mistake would do anything apart from add fuel to the corruption conspiracy theories and whip up an even bigger shitstorm of abuse. Again, no one wants to hear it. Taylor saying that he made a mistake doesn't give Thomas Tuchel his 2 points back. Many argue that the perceived lowering of refereeing standards is not down to money or accountability, but actually due to job security. We've seen the same faces officiate Premier League games for what feels like years now. These guys feel like they've been around for so long that they're basically household names. Craig Pawson, Michael Oliver, Anthony Taylor, Andre Mariner, and the recently retired trio of John Moss, Martin Atkinson, and the eclectic Mike Dean are all synonymous with the Premier League and controversial talking points. Unlike the other two suggested fixes for the disputable issue of degrading officiating standards, this one has much more weight to it, and I'll accept that a fresh face or two would do a lot to shake things up and help alter the perception that officiating in the Premier League is one major protected boys' club. I mean, hey, it makes sense, right? If everybody hates the referees, well, let's just get some new referees. I think in the eyes of many fans, it can't get any worse. But herein lies the problem, and if there's nothing else you take away from this video, I want it to be this. If we want better referees in the Premier League, we need a bigger pool of referees in the country to select from. To achieve a bigger pool of referees, we need to treat them better. I know, this is all very white knight and very high horse of me, but it's true. It's the only solution and the only way forward. At its core, it's a simple supply versus demand issue. We'll get better referees if we have a bigger pool of referees to choose from. We'll have a bigger pool of referees to choose from if we make the job of being a top-level elite referee more appealing. And to do that, we need to end all the controversy and the abuse and the anger, not only when a controversial decision is made, but when a decision is made that is objectively wrong. If you want to see an improvement to the standard of officiating, we have to make it less of a complete death sentence when an official gets it blatantly wrong. And when I say we, I mean everyone, players on the pitch, the managers and the fans. You can disagree with decisions, you can feel aggrieved, you can feel slighted and angry. I'm not saying you can't feel any of those things. Feeling that way is part of the reason we all love the sport so much. But we cannot allow abuse culture to fester and to reach higher and higher levels every season. Last September, the Kent FA published an open letter not only to Kent-based football leagues, but to the wider football community to show the detrimental effect the dehumanisation of officials is having. The Kent Football Association saw a 24% decrease in affiliated match officials. At the end of the 2020-2021 season, the Kent FA reported that they had 1,634 match officials working for them. By September in the 21-22 season, that number had dropped by 387. 387 officials, each with the potential, no matter how small, to be a first-class referee, and maybe a referee that one day you would have much preferred to see on your TV screen over one of the current crop. Around 200 of these 387 lost officials were new trainee referees. Of course, there's many a reason why a new trainee referee would no longer be interested in continuing their career, but even if just a fraction of these have quit due to abuse, it's too many. And I think I'm being quite lenient and quite kind here to say that maybe only a fraction may have thrown in the towel due to abuse. The open letter states that on that weekend alone, there were 7 incidents of physical and verbal abuse towards the officials that the Kent FA had to deal with. Look, I get it. Again, you don't care. Maybe you're a Liverpool fan that lives in Thailand, or maybe a Man United fan that only watches Man United games. Why should you care about the lower leagues that are taking place in Kent? But my point is that abuse culture quickly trickles down to the absolute lowest levels of the game, and it's the absolute lowest levels of the game that need the protection the most. Because if a new trainee referee quits after half a season because, as an example from the Kent FA letter, someone punches a lower league referee in the face, then that referee never has the opportunity to replace all the current referees in the Premier League that you think are worthless. And maybe you sit there and you think, well, I'd never hit a referee, or I'll complain on Twitter and on my podcast, but I'd never do it to their face. Well, you're missing the point, because it all feeds into the ecosystem of dehumanization. If we continuously add fuel to the fire that referees are useless and not deserving of our respect, then by virtue, you end up with a lack of respect at all levels for the man in the middle in the black shirt and with the whistle. And when you don't respect someone, it's easier to abuse them. And if we abuse referees, then they quit. And if they quit, then we have a smaller pool of referees in the country to choose from. And, well, you get the point by now. It's so tiring to see basically every single club in every single league claim that one referee or another has some sort of secret allegiances or bias against their club or whatever. Anthony Taylor has refereed 315 Premier League matches. He refereed non-league football matches for 8 years before he even begun to climb the professional football pyramid. I guarantee you, this guy does not give a shit about who is playing, where they are in the league, or whatever theory you have in your head. This is his job that he does week in, week out. He's not even 1% as emotionally invested in the outcome as you are. You don't think twice when you delete that email from HR that's landed in your inbox, and Taylor doesn't think twice if it's Spurs or Chelsea or United or Brighton or whichever team it may be. He's there just to do his job. The best outcome for any referee is to leave the pitch with no one talking about them. Why on earth would he welcome all the abuse and ridicule just to see Spurs come away with a point in game week 2 of the Premier League? I know the Romero hair pull on Cucurella was a pretty blatant mistake, but half the time when there is a massive outrage over a decision, it's nowhere near as clear cut as people like to make out it is. So many times I'll be watching a game in a stadium only to then check social media afterwards to discover that everyone has gone mental about a decision that no one in the stadium even had a problem with. There are so many times when watching a game on TV where both commentators will be in agreement that the referee has gotten something spot on, only for social media to claim that it's the worst decision they've ever seen in their life. How can that be? They both can't be true. I'm slightly off on a tangent here, but there's a massive disconnect between what people think the rules are and what the rules actually state in black and white. Football is so free-flowing and unpredictable that officiating it exists in this weird flux where certain challenges and actions are given or not given because that's the way it's always been. Because there are so many different permutations of what can happen in a football match, the rules are full of qualifying words such as excessive force or intent, or phrases like endangering a player's safety. Like, what do those really even mean? It's all subjective as fuck. Two players go in for a 50-50 and in a split second you need to consider the speed of each player, are the players in control, who gets to the ball first, where is the contact made, and all the rest of it. It's not really a surprise that you can have two similar looking challenges play out in the same weekend and in the end two different refereeing decisions. Because phrases like excessive force mean something different to everyone. It's a subjective ruling. Each referee has to make their own evaluation in their heads on what these terms mean and then act accordingly. Of course, it's also then perfectly reasonable and conceivable for said referee to change his mind over time regarding the parameters of those terms. And then multiply this across a game. Every nudge, every tussle, every tackle. The fact that most people seemingly agree with most decisions a referee makes during a game feels like a minor miracle when you think about it. And I've not even mentioned players who dive or who do things to on purposely deceive a referee, which is every player to ever play the game at a professional standard, by the way, which adds a whole new layer of complexity on top of all of this. Look, I'm probably going to get loads of shit for this video, and it all feels very woe is me and very high and mighty. I know saying don't be a dick is a very simple and easy hill to die on, and I understand the combination of elite sport and human emotion is anything but simple or easy. I'm not trying to sit here and say that I'm some sort of perfect bastion of hope, ready to save all the referees. I'm guilty of doing some of these things that I've spoken about myself. I'll fully admit that last season in the crappy Sunday league that I play in, I received my only booking of that season for dissent against a referee. But the bottom line is simple. If you truly believe that officiating standards are at the lowest that they've ever been, and for the record there's no real hard evidence of that, but we'll leave it for now, then the only solution is to respect referees more. Not to fine them, not to pull them out and make them explain decisions like school children in detention, but just to respect them more. I'm not sure when we all got so unbelievably angry. I don't want to sit here every video and complain about 24/7 news cycles and Twitter, but once again, it's hard to avoid the never-ending demand for content, clicks, and outrage that has been fueled by those usual suspects again. What's probably the most disheartening is not actually Dave5607 on Twitter signing a petition for Anthony Taylor to be thrown into the Thames or whatever, but the players and the coaches in the game who also take part in all of this. There are rules in place over what managers can and can't say about referees, which has led to some iconic and memeable quotes, of course, but well, they're here for a reason. Thomas Tuchel's comments saying that Taylor specifically didn't give certain decisions because it was Chelsea just fuels this nonsense conspiracy tin hat bullshit. The FA have launched an investigation into the comments and he'll probably get fined for it. More evidence to some about a conspiracy to ruin Chelsea Football Club or whatever Premier League club is in the news that week. But the FA are totally right, because it's the people at the top that hold the responsibility to ensure that the officials at the bottom aren't abused to the point where they no longer wish to continue officiating. It is impossible for someone to watch someone as highly thought of and as respected as Thomas Tuchel imply that a referee is crooked, and then for that same person to step onto a pitch on a Sunday morning and then totally respect the 18-year-old kid refereeing for a £20 match fee in their Sunday league fixture. Complaining about the standards of officiating in the Premier League is at best tin pot and boring, and at worst actively damaging towards the game. What's ironic is that if anything is actually lowering the standards of officiating in this country, it's all the discourse and the abuse culture surrounding that notion. Look, I genuinely hope we're not at the point of no return now. No matter where you are in Europe, someone somewhere sending a death threat to a referee is basically as common as wearing your team's shirt or having a pint at half time now. It just feels part of the game, as sad as that is to say. Maybe we should incentivize people to take up refereeing in the sport in other ways, such as a pay increase, but Christ, imagine announcing that after the game this weekend, Anthony Taylor would be receiving a pay increase. I think Premier League headquarters would be burned to the ground. Sorry to end on a somber note, but it's hard to see a way forward. All I can say is that the next time I feel aggrieved or hard done by a refereeing decision, I will allow myself to moan and to boo and to do all the pantomime stuff that comes with being at a football match. But once the game is finished, maybe it's best we all just evaluate our relationship with the sport and respect ourselves enough to not get whipped up into a frenzy where we abuse another human being for their subjective decision on a ruling. Because if we don't, well then it may get a whole lot worse than apparently it is already. Alright, cool. 3 new comments on the video. It's always good to get comments. Yeah, leave a comment down below. Yeah? Alright, let's check them out. First one, I agree. All referees in England are shit. Well, he didn't watch the video. Maybe he only saw the first 30 seconds or something. That's okay. He didn't watch the video. Alright, next one. Mike Dean isn't going to shag you, mate. Well, he might. You don't know that. If I'm nice to him, he might. So... You don't know. All right, last one. Why is Kylo Ren trying to talk to me about referees?